Welcome to the final presentation. The speaker is Eva Vandest. She's the group head of public affairs with Amarenco Group. Eva will talk about what we already heard, that there's simply more than low generation cost. And she will simply address the details of ESG for sustainable PV power plant developments. Eva, we're happy to have you.
Yes, thank you. Hello, Michael. Hello, everyone. Should I share the presentation or do you have it?
We have it as a backup, but I think it's easier if you do it.
Yes, sure. Okay. Okay. Oh, it's working. Okay, so I will try to be quite fast, like the deployment of solar right now. So I will talk a bit about sustainability, about ESG, but I will focus mostly on the environmental issues. So you already presented me. I work for Amarenco, Solar IPP, European Solar One, but with deploying also in Asia Pacific and in Middle East. So when we talk about sustainability and ESG in solar, first we talk about decarbonation. This is the goal of our solar sector, decarbonate the energy mix, okay? So the idea of ESG is that internally, solar energy producers are the main example by reducing their own carbon footprint, okay, and we have to assess the decarbonation rate of our solar power plant, okay? So just in this first slide to give you a little bit of some numbers. So for a photovoltaic solar power plant installed in mainland France today, it will emit an average of 23 to 43 grams of CO2 equivalent per kilowatt produced. Okay, so welcome in the carbon market. Varying, of course, with the location. So the assessment has to be power plant by power plant. In contrast of these numbers, natural gas and coal-fired plants have carbon impacts of 43 grams CO2 per kilowatt, and even more. So this is a number for the French governmental agency ADEME in 2023. So there is no clue, no debate. Solar energy is decarbonizing. Okay, and I just mentioned one concrete example. So for a 2.75 megawatt Amarenco solar car park project, the total carbon footprint, including construction, dismantling, and maintenance over 40 years, is 2,568 tons CO2 equivalent, okay? And the impact of the plant's operation will be 25.4 grams CO2 per kilowatt. This impact is mostly influenced by its photovoltaic structure, okay, and with shade structure, because here it's solar car park, we are having a higher footprint due to the increase of steel consumption. But with recycling materials that help to reduce this impact. So you see the decarbonation is concerning the entire supply chain to have a solar installation, and also the entire development of the project, but the result are decarbonation. So now I will approach another important topic, evolution, regarding cohabitation, let's say, between solar energy and environment, natural environment. We assist to a huge evolution of the European regulation framework, okay, on spatial planning and environmental regulation. The REPowerEU plan in Europe after the Ukraine crisis, okay, decided to increase as much as possible or the deployment of solar with big numbers like 600 gigawatts to be achieved now, and acceleration. But of course, our authorities are very attentive to the impact in the environment, because the idea is not to decarbonate in one hand and to destroy natural habitats and carbon sinks, natural carbon sinks. On the other hand, this doesn't make sense at all, okay? So the REPowerEU plan is indeed planning acceleration and fast-track permitting procedures. It also changing the approach on how we are doing solar, and mostly with an increasing interest of public authorities, okay? They will have to map to the mapping of areas for renewable and to define acceleration zone with specific regulation on the zone that has to be lighter in order to accelerate. And in this regulation package, the public authorities prioritize deployment of solar on artificialized surfaces like rooftop and parking, but everybody know that it won't be enough, and I will tackle this in the next slide. So just give you an example of one country where I'm born, France. You can hear that to my accent. So in France, we have a very long history of environmental laws, okay, and a very long history of environmental laws applicable to renewables. Even if it was more historically on wind and solar energy deployment, is more recent for France, but we are also accelerating. So firstly, the best, the most developed framework is for ground-mounted PV installation that can have impact on forest, natural and agricultural land. So we have different kind of authorization that are requirements from the planning code, the environment code, the forestry code, okay? So all the impacts on natural resources has to be analyzed before installing the solar power plant and to get the permit for it. All the installation up to 1 megawatt will have a systematic environmental assessment. And we are assist also in France of the beginning of the implementation of the new EU regulation, and huge evolution in the different process with an organization of our public authorities, okay, to map those areas for renewable. And the choice in France, the main choice and revelation, let's say, it's the national authorities decided through the law, last law for renewable, to give the responsibility to local authorities, responsible in terms of objective, in terms of mapping of those areas, on definition on zone, acceleration zone. And all of this is, of course, a question of impact, but also public acceptance, okay? Because all the people will see more and more solar panels everywhere in their daily life. So it's very important that we have an harmonized and balanced deployment. Just checking a bit the time. Okay. So which impact on the solar installation? So I just mentioned some impact of the solar installation on nature, but all this evolution of regulation and this integration of sustainability into solar sector is also changing the way we want to approach the project and the methodology, mostly during the development phase. We will study how to limit the impact on biodiversity. So first is starting with choosing the best sites. So now public authorities are doing their cartography and mapping, but never forget that this is solar producer expertise and first job to select those lands to do this those cartographies. So it's very important that we can collaborate and cooperate together, public institution and solar power plant, because we are doing this from the beginning of the sector, cartography, select the sites, but we can also evolve ourselves and move on by integrating biodiversity impact and issue more and more in the way we are selecting our sites. Then we can compare the sites, prioritizing, comparing them, and prioritizing where we will go regarding the impact. Also, we can have an action on the construction phase and before the design of the power plant to respect the schedule of the biology of the species, okay, the planning, the agenda of the deployment and construction of the sites will be adapted to the biology of the species and also to the vegetation on the site to avoid and limit most of the impacts. And during the work, some concrete measure will be taken, like strictly limiting clearing of vegetation adapted to the ecosystem, just what is needed, not more. Use of driven piles, installation of nesting boxes for bird life, fencing off natural habitats sensitive to trembling, or the movement of machinery. So it appears like small steps, but in fact, all those small steps aggregated together will change everything. The idea is really to reduce the impact on the ecosystem. And this is through a very simple measure, starting with consciousness, with attention, with good preparation. This can be achieved at no cost in an easy way. And during the operation, it is recommended to have a regular ecological monitoring using a control plot, depending on the size of the site and evaluating the fauna and flora passages. So I think it's just a question of mindset, integrating how natural habitat and biodiversity is important, urgent, and when you are engaged in deployment of renewable energy, you are contributing to the ecology transition to decarbonate. So this is very logical, so that you are also attentive to forest, natural land, and all nature resources. So what we are doing at Amarenco, we are going even one step further, and we are an engaged company influencing other and the sector to move forward toward regeneration of soils and ecosystem. So we think that regarding the urgent emergency of the situation, it's not enough to reduce the impact, but we are also developing new business model to go behind and to have a impact positive net and that we can restore nature. It's not only about avoiding, but it is about regenerate the ecosystem. It started with an investment commitment from a shareholder, and this money is transformed now in a program that we called ECO, attached to all the deployment of our solar institution. It's not an easy transformation. We have to regenerate first the brain of the company, to change our mindsets, to integrate new data, new method, to collaborate more and more with new kind of expert, ecologists, scientists, agronomists. But this is very fascinating, very interesting, and we can see that we are progressing quite quickly on this question. And now, I think you might be comfortable with this sequence: avoid, reduce, compensate. So the idea of Amarenco is to push to add a last step: regenerate, okay, for resilience of ecosystem and response to social needs. So this is by also improving, moving forward on strict specification for identification of sites. So we are describing what is a forest, primary forest, secondary forest has to be avoided, humid zone, natural protected areas, etc., etc. We are going through quite a lot of details with the help of our scientific partners and experts, collecting data from satellites, from different kind of tools, which Solar is already familiar with, because we are working with a natural resource already, which is solar, and we know how to calculate the radiation of solar. So we are just integrating other natural resources in the assumption to design our solar plant, in order to assess the potential of restoration of the site where we will put our solar park. And as I mentioned, it's also a lot of in-house training of the teams for them to integrate these new challenges. This is impacting the process inside the company, to move to avoidance, to regeneration of soil and ecosystem, starting with initial study on the sites, analyzing the state of the soil and the ecosystem. We develop internal indicators for this. Then we design the solar plant according to those results. And we are very attentive to the construction of the power plant, integrating different techniques. And at the end, our goal is to produce not only electricity, but a regenerative electron, an electron that decarbonates the mix, but is also restoring natural resources. And I will conclude with two publications. So Amarenco is contributing to the evolution of the solar sector in general. I am very honored to chair the land use and permitting workstream at REPowerEU Europe. We started 3 years ago with agri-solar, which is a dual-use approach. So we are promoting dual-use approach because as I said, artificial areas won't be enough to achieve our objective. We will have to go on non-artificial land, but we should not go. We should go, let's say, with best practices, with good methods. So we gather with all the participants of the workstream, all the solar IPP and experts, best practices in order to address agri-solar, combining solar energy production and agricultural production in the same piece of land, increasing the land equivalent ratio of the land. So those solutions are very interesting to be developed. We just published a version 2 last July. Of the guide, and last year we also did a work with BirdLife International. As a chair, when I started 3 years ago, I was quite amazed that we were not talking that much with NGO, environmental NGO, and our goal is to reconcile, because we need to reconcile industry and ecology, to cooperate together, to take into account each interest, because both of them are very important for the future of our society. Fighting is going nowhere. So this report has been published with Solar Europe and BirdLife International to address solar, biodiversity, and land use best practice guidelines. Thank you.